So again, nothing's changed with Assange. He's still a political prisoner, and if you want to understand who Assange is and why he's in prison and what he's being threatened with, why the United States want to extradite him from the UK, I've covered his extradition hearings, his extradition case since 2020. I'm one of the only journalists doing it, and you can find everything on the channel here. There's a playlist for the extradition hearing from 2020, then the High Court hearings from 2021, and then, of course, all the latest developments with the UK issuing the order to extradite him. Now, this is a letter that's just been published from Reporters Without Borders, and it's addressed to the Home Secretary, the UK Home Secretary Priti Patel, because in the United Kingdom, if you are about to be extradited, the person who has the final say, that must sign the extradition order, is the Home Secretary, and in this case, it's Priti Patel. So that's why this letter has been addressed to her. And it says the RSF joins 19 organizations in urging Home Secretary Patel to reject Assange extradition. That's Priti Patel right there. So Reporters Without Borders have joined 19 organizations to urge her to reject the US government's request to extradite journalist and WikiLeaks publisher Julian Assange. These groups, representing press freedom, free expression, and journalists' organizations, have also requested a meeting with Patel to discuss concerns in the case. So just before I read you the letter, I just want to make clear that Assange's lawyers have 4 weeks now to make submissions to Patel to try and convince her to stop the extradition. So that's why people are saying you should write to her. They're urging members of the public, constituents, to write to Priti Patel, to her office, and to ask her to kindly please stop the extradition. So this is the letter. It says, Dear Home Secretary, we, the undersigned press freedom, free expression, and journalists' organizations are writing to express our serious concern regarding the possibility of extradition of WikiLeaks publisher Julian Assange to the United States and to ask you to reject the US government's extradition request. We also request a meeting with you to discuss these points further. In March, the Supreme Court refused to consider Mr. Assange's appeal against the High Court decision, which overturned the district court ruling barring extradition on mental health grounds. Now, again, for those of you who have no knowledge of how the courts work, this sounds like gibberish to you. Again, I'll explain this very simply. The United States wants to extradite Assange from the UK. The first court, the district court, said no. You can't extradite him because US prisons are bad and he'll commit suicide. The United States said, okay, we're going to take this and appeal it in the High Court. When it went to the High Court, Assange lost. The High Court said, no, you can't extradite him because the United States gave these assurances they will treat Assange well. They believed these assurances. And then Assange said, you know what, I'm going to go to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, no, we don't want to hear your case. So now it's bounced all the way back to the lower court. The lower court has no choice but to send this to Priti Patel to sign it and extradite Assange. So that's where we're at right now, okay? So we are deeply disappointed with this decision, given the high public interest in this case, which deserved review by the highest court in the land. However, it is now in your hands to decide whether to approve or reject Mr. Assange's extradition to the US. The undersigned organizations urge you to act in the interest of press freedom and journalism by refusing extradition and immediately releasing Mr. Assange from prison, where he has remained on remand for 3 years, despite the great risks posed to his mental and physical health. So again, Assange is in Belmarsh prison. This is a Category A maximum security prison in London. I've been outside. I filmed some videos on the channel, and it's the worst of the worst, right? They usually put people from Al-Qaeda in this prison. So that should kind of give you an idea of how serious this is, that they're putting a journalist, a non-violent journalist, in a maximum security prison. And he's not serving a sentence, right? They're just keeping him there. They won't let him out on house arrest. So that shows you this is very, very political. In the US, Mr. Assange would face trial on 17 counts under the Espionage Act and 1 count under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, which combined could see him in prison for up to 175 years. He is highly likely to be detained there in conditions of isolation or solitary confinement, despite the US government's assurances, which would severely exacerbate his risk of suicide. So again, this is absolutely true because I was in the court when the US lawyers were arguing that, special administrative measures, which is what they call these isolating conditions. Yeah, this is totally fine, and it's not bad, and there's nothing wrong about it, and Assange won't, he won't have any adverse health effects from it, and now they're singing a different tune. So after they lost the case, the US is like, yeah, we promise we won't put him in there. I can tell you, I don't believe them, and neither should you. Further, Mr. Assange would be unable to adequately defend himself in the US courts, as the Espionage Act lacks a public interest defense. Right? So what that means is Assange, the things he published are in the public interest, right? He showed that multiple governments, the US government, their allies, were killing civilians. They were kidnapping and torturing people with the CIA. All sorts of crimes. I can't go through the whole list because it's ridiculously enormous. So this is about Afghanistan, about Iraq, about Guantanamo Bay also. And so this is in the public interest. This is high quality. This is like the best of the best journalism that you could possibly get. And the thing is, if you're charged as a spy in the United States under the Espionage Act, you have no right to go before the court and say, well, I did this because it's in the interest of the public. You're not allowed to do that. And, Daniel Ellsberg, who was also, he did the Pentagon Papers with the New York Times, where they showed what all the naughty stuff the US was doing in Vietnam, to put it mildly. He also testified during Assange's hearing, and he said that meaning Ellsberg, I was also not allowed to give a public interest defense, and neither is anyone since. They don't care. There's no explaining why you did this and why it was good for the public. They don't care. They're not going to let you do that. So his prosecution would set a dangerous precedent that could be applied to any media outlet that published stories based on leaked information, or indeed any journalist, publisher, or source anywhere in the world. This is true, right? Because again, Assange is Australian. He's never lived or worked in the US. He's in the UK. And so the US is trying to take an Australian man in the United Kingdom, bring him to the United States, and try him as a spy. I mean, if they set this precedent, then they'll do it to anybody, right? The letter continues, we ask you, the Home Secretary, to honor the UK government's commitment to protecting and promoting media freedom and reject the US extradition request. We ask you to release Mr. Assange from Belmarsh prison and allow him to return to his young family after many years of isolation. Finally, we ask you to publicly commit to ensuring that no publisher, journalist, or source ever again faces detention in the UK for publishing information in the public interest. We request to schedule a meeting at your earliest convenience and would be grateful for a prompt response. So I think this is good because it puts a lot of the important points in there. And obviously, there are too many to go over. This is really an extraordinary case. It really is. I've gone through all of these points at one time or another throughout my reporting. So again, if you're interested, go look at the playlist on the YouTube channel. It's in chronological order, so you can follow everything that's happened literally day by day, and I'll explain the whole case to you. But these are some of the main points that you have to understand. So this is the latest development. Again, we'll see what happens. I'm not holding out much hope. I don't think Priti Patel is going to save Assange. I think she will okay the extradition, unfortunately. But we'll see what submissions his defense make and where the legal process goes from here.